Hashem, today we're doing Daf Samach Dalid Amud Aleph. We're holding on the very bottom of Samach Gimel on bed, last line, Tanu Rabbanan. So Pasuk says, Uvnucho Yomar Shuva Adonai Revot Alfei Yisrael. Pasuk says, we said every Shabbat, Shuva Hashem Revot Alfei Yisrael. So we're talking about Pirya V'Rivya. Says the Gemara Melamed She'en Ashchina Shora Al Pachot Mishnei Alafim U'Shnei Revavot. It says Alfei Revavot. So Alfei is 2 times 1,000. Revavot is 2 times 10,000. So altogether 22,000 for the Shechina to be Shoreh. So says the Gemara, Reish Ayu Yisrael Shnei Alafim U'Shnei Revavot Chaser Achat. Imagine that Bnei Yisrael in that community are one short of 22,000. And you have an individual who didn't do his part in being osek in Pirya V'Rivya. You see, this person is causing the Shechina to be mistalek miYisrael. You see how important Pirya V'Rivya is. Abba Chanan Amar Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Chayav Mita. Someone who doesn't involve himself in Pirya V'Rivya is Chayav Mita. Shneimar Uvanim Lo Ayu Lahem. Pasuk says by Nadav and Avihu. Actually, it's in this week's parsha, I believe. Says that they were niftarim and they didn't have any children, and Elazar and Itamar took over. So it says ha'ayulaim banim lo metu. It says they were niftarim and they didn't have children. It sounds like if they would have had children, perhaps they wouldn't have been niftarim. So it sounds like according to what we're saying here, according to this drasha, one of the reasons that Bnei Aaron died, Nadav and Avi died, is because they weren't osek in Pirya V'Rivya. Acherim omrim goyim l'shchina shetistalek. Others say that if a person doesn't involve himself in Pirya V'Rivya, it causes the Shechina to leave Yisrael. Shneimar liyot lecha leolim zaracha acharecha. Bizman sh'zaracha acharecha Shechina shora. When there's zaracha acharecha, you're osek in Pirya V'Rivya, that's when the Shechina is shoreh. But in zaracha acharecha, Al mishoreh al eitzim avanim. If in zaracha acharecha, if a person not osek in Pirya V'Rivya, what's the Shechina gonna be shoreh on? Eitzim and avanim. Says the Mishnah. Nasa isha v'shaha ima 10 shanim v'lo yalda eno rashai levatel. If a person married a woman and he stayed with her for 10 years, v'lo yalda, and she didn't have children, so eno rashai levatel, he's not allowed to continue to be with her and be mevatel Pirya V'Rivya. He has to find another wife to be able to be mekayem Pirya V'Rivya. Girsha, if he was megaresh her, so muteret li nasil la'acher, she's allowed to marry somebody else. We don't say that she can't have children and someone who needs to be mekayem Pirya V'Rivya cannot marry her, because we say maybe just they didn't have the zechut to have children together, but maybe she would have children from somebody else. And the second person, he could stay with her for 10 years. If she had a hapala, if she had a miscarriage, moneh, those 10 years go from the time that she miscarried. So Tanu Rabbanan, Na'isa isha v'shaha ima 10 shanim v'lo yalda, yotzi ve'iten ketubah. It says if a person married a woman and he stayed with her 10 shanim, 10 years, and she didn't have children, yotzi ve'iten ketubah. He has to give her a get and he has to give a ketubah. Why? Shema lo zacha libanot mimena. Because maybe he wasn't zocheh libanot mimena to build a family from her. We're going to see later on in the Gemara that the Gemara is going to question this. It sounds like he has to give a ketubah because we're assuming the problem is with him, or maybe the problem is with her. So Zava Pishen Raya Davar Zechel Davar. Even though we don't have a Raya, we have a Zecher. It says Mikes Eshes Shanim L'Shevet Avram Be'eretz Canaan. So when did Avram take Hagar? 10 years after he sat in Eretz, after he lived in Eretz Canaan with his wife, with Sarah. So L'Lamdecha She'en Yeshivat Chutz La'aretz Oleh Min HaMinyan. You see from here that their time living in Chutz La'aretz didn't count towards the 10 years. Right? He waited 10 years with Sarah after they entered Eretz Canaan in order to take Hagar because he couldn't have children from Sarah. Lefikach chalahu o shechaltahi. Therefore, if one of them was sick or something like that, or shneim chavushim beit asurim, or if they were captured, and those don't count as part of the 10 years. If we see that living outside of Eretz Yisrael doesn't count as part of the 10 years, so for sure, if there's some other ikuv that would cause them to not have children, that some outside factor, that also would not count towards the 10 years. Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. Rava said to Rav Nachman, Velelif mitzchak. Why don't we learn from Yitzchak? Tichtiv, it says in the pasuk, Vayi Yitzchak ben 40 shana bekachdo et Rivka. How old was Yitzchak when he took Rivka? He was 40 when he took Rivka. Ochtiv, Yitzchak ben 60 shana beletotam. How old was he when he gave birth? 60. So you see, Yitzchak waited 40 years without having 20 years without having children, from 40 to 60. So why are we learning from Avraham that 10 years he waited without having children? Why don't we learn from Yitzchak that he waited 20 years? So Amar le Yitzchak akur haya. He said, no. Can't learn from Yitzchak because Yitzchak, he was akur. He had an issue that he couldn't have children. So there's no point of him finding another wife. That's why he stayed even more than 10 years. So Gemara says, Avram nami akur haya. What do you mean? Avram also was akur, like we're going to learn later. No. Really, the reason that we have that Yitzchak was 40 when he got married and 60 when he had children, we need that for a different cheshbon. It's not really an extra pasuk that we could say, oh, this pasuk is extra and we're using this to teach us that a person could wait up to 20 years. No. Avram, it doesn't need to say that it was 10 years after he was in Eretz Yisrael that he took Hagar. We don't need the number necessarily unless it's to teach us this halacha that a person waits up to 10 years. But by Yitzchak, we need the numbers for a different reason. So we can't use it to teach us how long a person should wait before finding another wife for Peri Avrivia. We have, the Torah tells us how old Ishmael was in order for us to make a larger cheshbon, and we need these numbers of Yitzchak also in order to make a larger cheshbon to figure out how long Yaakov was away for, and that Yaakov was not punished for the time that he was away from his father when he was in Yeshivat Shever. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Yitzchak Avinu akur haya. So Rabbi Yitzchak teaches Yitzchak Avinu was akur. He was not able to have children. Shneimar vayater Yitzchak laHashem lenochach ishto. Al ishto lo neimar. It doesn't say Yitzchak prayed for his wife that she was not able to have children. El lenochach ishto. He prayed opposite his wife. Sounds like melamed shneim akurim. They both had some type of defect issue that they couldn't have children. So Yachi vayater lo vayater lahemi bayile. The pasuk says vayater lo. Hashem responded to him. Hashem listened to his prayer. It should have said vayater lahem. Hashem responded to their prayer that they healed both of them. So the Gemara says, you know why it says vayater lo? The feishenu dome tfilat tzaddik ben tzaddik letfilat tzaddik ben rasha, because a tfilat tzaddik ben tzaddik doesn't compare. A tfilat tzaddik ben rasha doesn't compare to a tfilat tzaddik ben tzaddik. Yitzchak tfilah was tzaddik ben tzaddik. He was listened to. He was responded to first. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak b'mnei ma ayu avotenu akurim. Why is it that the avot were akurim? Why is it that they could not have children? Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu desires the tefillah of tzaddikim. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak lama nimshalat tefilatan shel tzaddikim ke'atar. How come the tefillah of tzaddikim is compared to an atar? The pasuk says vayater lo Hashem. It's compared to an atar. What's an atar? It's a pitchfork that they use in the in the farm to throw up the grains and the hay. So ma'atar ze ma'apech tvua mimalkom lakom. Just like this pitchfork, they use it to throw around the produce and the grains and the crops from one area to another area. So, כך תפילתן של צדיקים מהפכת מידותיו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. Also, the tefillot of tzaddikim, they turn around the the midot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mimidat ragzanut lamidat rachmanut. From ragzanut, from anger to rachmanut to midat rachamim. Amar Rabbi Ami, Avraham v'Sarah tumtumin ayu. Rabbi Ami says Avraham and Sarah were tumtumin. That means that their area of their ever was an otomakom was covered. So even though they were born, so Avram was born male, Sarah was born female, but the erva was covered. Shneimar pasuk says habitu el tzurchu tzavtem vel makevet bornu kartem. Pasuk says, look at where you came from, tzurchu tzavtem, the rock where you were chiseled out from. It sounds like something needed to be chiseled away. Or el makevet bornu kartem, or the crack in the rock that you came out from. It sounded like a crack needed to be formed. Something needed to happen. Something needed to be formed or removed in order for the erva to be revealed. And the next pasuk says, look at Avram and Sarah. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua. Sarah Imenu Ailonit Haita. He teaches Sarah Imenu was an Ailonit. Shneimar v'ti Sarai akara en lah valad. Afilu beit valad en lah. That Sarah did not have a vlad. It could have just said v'ti Sarai akara, that she couldn't have children. Why does it say en lah valad? She didn't have a vlad. Say afilu beit valad en lah. She didn't even have a beit vlad. She didn't even have a rechem. She didn't have a womb. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll go a little bit further. Amar Rav Yehuda Bereder Rav Shemuel Bar Shilat Mishmei Derav Lo Shanu Ela Bedorot Harishonim Sheshenoten Meruvavot Sheshenoten Merubot. This halacha that wait 10 years, he teaches that this only was applicable in Dorot Rishonim, that you wait 10 years when they lived such long lives. But in these later generations, that our lives are not as long, we don't wait 10 years, we wait 2.5 years. Right? It will be 30 months. That corresponds to 3 pregnancies. Now, pregnancy is 9 months each, but Rashi says we had 1 month because of in order for her to become tahor. Because of the Tumah V'Tahara, it takes a month to become Tahora. So we're talking 10 months per pregnancy, 3 pregnancies, 30 months. So that's why we wait. That's what we wait nowadays. That's what Rav Yehuda Bereder Rav Shmuel Bar Shilat wants to suggest. Amar Rav Nachman, Shalosh Shanim. Rav Nachman says, no, not 2.5 years, 3 years. Keneged Shalosh Pekidot. You need 3 years because you need to pass 3 Rosh Hashanahs corresponding to the 3 ladies who Hashem remembered and made them pregnant on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Chana were all. That's when they were remembered, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it that they were able to become pregnant. Amar Rabba, Lidnu Lani Klali. Rabba said, no, we don't have these rules of 2.5 years, 3 years. We go with our Mishnah of 10 years. Michdi, Matnitin Mantiken. Who wrote our Mishnah? Rebbe. Vabi made David imichani, and already in the times of David HaMelech, the years were diminished. Tichtiv Yemei Shenotenu B'hem 70 Shana. Pasuk says Yemei Shenotenu B'hem 70 Shana. Our years are 70 years that started in the time of David HaMelech. So you see that already by David HaMelech, the years were diminished, and still our Rebbe holds in our Mishnah, we wait 10 years. Says the Gemara further. So we said in the Braita that he has to Yotzieh Ve'iten Ketubah, he has to give her a Ketubah, because maybe he has an issue. He didn't have the zechut to have a family with her. so he owes her ketubah. So the Gemara says, Dilma Yid lo zachia. Maybe she didn't have a zechut to have a family with him. So the Gemara says, He came on the lo mifkada periyav revia lo miansha. She doesn't have a mitzvah of periyav revia. So Hashem wouldn't make it that she cannot have a family because of a zechut that she doesn't have. It's his not having a zechut that caused this. So the Gemara says, in general, is this whole din true of the waiting 10 years? V'amar le Rabbanan le Rabbi Abba bar Zavda nasi v'itzavolid b'nei. One time Chachamim came to Rabbi Abba bar Zavda and they told him, listen, you gotta get married and have children. Amar lu izakai havu izakai. If I was zocheh, havu li mikamaita, I would have had for my first wife. So you see that he should have had You see that this rule of waiting 10 years, you have to find a new wife to be Mekayem Periyav Revia, sounds like it doesn't apply because Rabbi Bar Zavda said, listen, if I would have been Zochai, I would have had. So I don't need to have another wife to be Mekayem Periyav Revia. So Gemara says, Hatam dichuye kamadche lehu Rabbanan. Over there, he was just being doche them because really the Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda Yaakov and Pirkei Rav Huna. Because Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda was one of the people who he became akur from the drasha of Rav Huna. We had this before that Rav Huna would give long drashot, and some of the Talmidim, they were embarrassed to leave during the drasha, and they would hold in their meraglaim, and it caused them to not be able to have children. So since he wasn't able to have children, it was not shayach for him to marry somebody else. That's why he didn't do it. But if he could have been Mekayem Periyav Revia with somebody else, he would have done it. Rav Gidel Yaakov and Pirkei Rav Huna. This happened to Rav Gidel also. He became akur. He became not able to have children. Rav Chelbo Yaakov and Pirkei Rav Huna. Sheshet Yaakov and Pirkei Rav Huna. That's who we had earlier. Rav Sheshet. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. Rav Yaakov Bar Achav Achdate Suskhinta. He got this disease Suskinta that made his flesh look a different color. He lost his his ruach. So Talio Ba'arz the Beirav, he held himself up on one of the beams of the Beit Midrash, v'nafik minei kiutza yarka, and some type of a green spit or discharge came out of him. Green it was green like a lulav. Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Shitin Sabe Havina. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov said there were 60, elders. V'kulu Yaakov and Pirkei Rav Huna, and all of us became akurim from the drush of Rav Huna. Levar me'ana, except for me. Dekami ben Avshaya Chochma tiyeh techaye ba'aleha. Because I fulfilled myself the pasuk that says Chochma techaye ba'aleha. Okay, so we'll stop here.